Hey guys, I'm Sage Valentine, and it's time for me to review the finale of CBS's Big Brother Season 18, episode number 42. I know I kept you guys waiting, but I felt like I had to sit down and really watch and pay attention to the season finale because I knew that if I had recorded that review that night, I would have rushed through it. So I really wanted to take my time. So here goes nothing. Paul, James, and Nicole were the final three. They competed in 3 different parts of the final HOH competition. Paul won the first part, which in my opinion was rough. And yes, I was very disappointed when James fell after Nicole because all I could think of was James throwing all of those competitions week after week after week. And to be honest, if he hadn't thrown those competitions, I do think that people would have looked at him as a better player in the game. But for season 18, all that he's known for is coasting. For the second part of the HOH competition, it was James versus Nicole, and Nicole won that competition because she completed it in 7 minutes and 24 seconds versus James's 19 minutes and 6 seconds, and that competition was super complicated and time consuming. Paul basically told us after that competition ended that Nicole deserved to go to the final 2 more than James did because he did absolutely nothing in the season, and Nicole basically said the same thing, but she also said that she could beat James. What has he done? So we get to the jury segment with Will Kirby, Dr. Will, one of my faves from Big Brother, and everybody had to give their opinions on James, Paul, and Nicole. So I wrote some notes, so here goes nothing. On the topic of James, Natalie said that James protected himself and her, and he managed to stay off the block week after week after week. Michelle said he had a phenomenal social game. He did have a good one to keep him in the game that long. Bridget said he never got blood on his hands. Zakiya said he flew under the radar. Day said that he played a safe game and she wanted to see more, like I did. Because James, I have not been a big fan of him in the past 2 seasons, but I felt like he could have done more. But I guess that wasn't a part of his strategy. And I think it was, I forgot who else agreed with Davon. It must have been Victor, who said that James really didn't try. Corey said that James followed Nicole around like a puppy. The pot calling the kettle black, just saying. And so the house guest said this about Paul. He played a phenomenal game. He made nasty comments. He really did. For those of you that did not have the feeds, you were not privy to the things that he said. He said some really vile things. They said Paul was the best liar. He had the best social game, and he was the best in competitions. He used Victor as a shield, kind of, sort of. And Victor said that Paul was cool with everyone and he wasn't afraid to speak his mind. Davon made a wonderful point when she said this. There's Paul the person and Paul the game player. Paul the game player was phenomenal. Paul the person called people names. Someone said that Paul was obnoxious and mean. He played a good game, and Natalie is bitter towards Paul, but she respects his gameplay. Now, as far as Nicole is concerned, and on a side note, because I forgot to say it, that the jury, basically the consensus was they either wanted to see Nicole or Corey as the final juror before James. They were super surprised when they saw Corey come in, though. That was pretty funny. As far as Nicole is concerned, Davon said that one of Nicole's best moves was convincing everyone to get her out. Some people are probably saying, no, that was all Paulie. Honey, Nicole was pulling the strings behind the scenes, and Davon saw that, and that's why Nicole wanted her out of the house. Someone said that Nicole kept herself and her side person safe. Yes, they did. Nicole made the votes go the way she wanted them to. Yep. Nicole took the easy way out. I mean, she was allowed to, so. Natalie said that Mr. Jenkins could have gotten Jose out. In other words, choosing to kick him out first was the easy way out. And Michelle took it As far as Michelle's opinion, let me say this. Nicole voted Michelle out of the house because Michelle called her out. It is what it is. If Michelle hadn't called her out, I think Michelle would have made it further in the game. But when she did that, she put a target on herself. The guys said that it was strategic. Michelle believes that it was a personal move. I believe it was a little bit of both. Because Nicole took it all in stride, but she was really pissed that Michelle did that to her. Davon said that Nicole was Geppetto and the guys were Pinocchio. She was correct, because the guys were basically doing Nicole's dirty work and didn't even realize it. So we get to the third part of the HOH, and the winner becomes the final HOH of the summer, and they decided who would sit next to them. Paul ended up winning the final HOH. He decided that it was better to take Nicole to the final two because he said that he worked hard for both himself and James went behind his back and made a deal with Nicole, and Nicole turned around and told Paul everything. And I was just like, all that proved was that Nicole was a snake and that she could not be trusted. I was like, this dude just made a $500,000 mistake. And he's going to go down in history as being yet another person from a CBS reality show to make that big mistake. I just shook my head because all I could think of was my mom saying that Nicole had both James and Paul in her pocket, and my mom was right. Because I believe if James had been the person to win the final HOH, he would have taken Nicole over Paul, definitely. As far as James is concerned, when he was evicted, he had an exit interview with Julie Chen. He told Julie Chen that he wasn't sure what Paul's final move, meaning evicting James, was or meant. But he realized that Nicole told Paul that James, he tried to get her to keep James around. James didn't win much. No, he didn't. He said he took advice from the greatest players. He didn't want to be a threat, and he used his social game. But in reality, James ended up being used for the entire season. He wasn't really looked at as a dynamic player, and there will be people who will disagree with me on that point, but it's the truth. Because the only reason why James was taken to the final five was because each pair, Nicorette and the Sitting Ducks, Victor and James, felt like they could use James in some way. But they both knew that James was not going to win this season. And I figured out from the beginning that James wasn't going to win the season. I'm still shaking my head. James says that he's ready for a relationship. And as far as him and Natalie, he's saying, who knows? A lot of people disagree with me on this, but I'm not looking at that showmance as being a real relationship in the future. But stranger things have happened, but it's not looking good in my opinion. So let's get down to the live jury interrogation. And yes, I will talk about Davon's comment about Paul later on, so just hold on. As far as the interrogation goes, Natalie asked Paul, "Why should I give you my vote when you didn't give me respect?" Paul answered unapologetically that he could not hide his personality and his craziness. I just shook my head when he said that. Like, at least say, you know what, I went a little bit too far, or at least be a tad bit humble, but that's not his style. Michelle asked Nicole to name one move that should earn her $500,000. Nicole talked about how she had to go through Natalie and through Corey to get Michelle to put up Paul and Victor. Remember when Michelle was the second HOH. Corey doesn't think that Paul was a great strategist. Paul shoots back he was on the block 6 times and only 2 votes were cast to evict him. Again, unapologetic. And there is a way when you're on the jury that I've noticed, that I have observed over the years, there's a way to toot your own horn without sounding arrogant, and I just shook my head when he said that answer. Victor said to Nicole, "Did you play an equal part in the decision making?" I guess between Nicole and Corey, or Nicole and the rest of the house. And Nicole basically says she was the brains behind a lot of it and things went how she wanted them to. Zakiya asked Paul, "Why do you deserve to win $500,000 over Nicole?" Paul said it was his first time playing. He worked his butt off. He did not hide behind the scenes. Paulie asked Nicole why she deserved to win the $500,000, and Nicole answered she gave 100%, 1,000% of the time. She turned negatives into positives. Her whole game was laid out for everyone to see in season 16. In other words, she was like, "Listen, I'm a vet. I played this game before. I was in season 16. You guys should have watched season 16. Then you would have seen what type of player I am. Then you would have seen me coming. Not my problem." I was like, that's one heck of an answer, Nicole. Like, wow. That's all I was saying. James asked the final question. It was basically a question of whether or not Paul was ever planning on honoring that final 2 deal that he had with James. And Paul basically said because Nicole told on him, James, that is the reason why Paul took Nicole to the final 2. And I was just shaking my head like, dude, here's your answer. I was flabbergasted. So why did Paul think he should win Big Brother? Because in the beginning he was an easy target. He teamed up with the right people. He had Victor. He had a good social game. He had no help. He split up the most powerful couple. He had 7 competition wins and the most in-house competition wins of the season. He stayed true to himself and his cards were shown. Nicole, on the other hand, despite the fact that she is not a good public speaker, could have fooled me. She said that she was happy to be in the game. She was good at convincing people. She aligned with Corey. Everything was well thought out and strategized, all of her behind-the-scenes moves. She gave it all she had, and that was it. I was just like, Nicole comes off as the lovable one, the mastermind from behind the scenes, and Paul, to be honest, doesn't look good compared to that. He played a good game, but the things that he said rubbed people the wrong way, and he was not apologetic about it. If he had been apologetic, I think that he would have had a better chance to win the game. So as each juror member put their key into the box, everybody was so nice. They told Paul and Nicole that they loved them and congratulations. It was a hard decision. It was a tough season. Good luck to them. And Corey was pretty funny when he said, "Looking good, Nicole." And he looked at Paul and said, "Paul." It was funny. And James said that he was proud of both Paul and Nicole, and Paul was still bougie. And I was just like, oh, dear God. So it came down to the votes. Paul received votes from James, Victor, Michelle, and Bridget. Nicole received votes from Corey, Natalie, Paulie, and Zakia, and it came down to Davon. And I was just like, Big Brother, you are so shady for that. So shady. It was just like Davon having sweet revenge. Davon having the power to crown either Paul or Nicole as the winner of this season after all she went through. I was like, oh my goodness. And in the end, Davon decided to give her vote to Nicole over Paul. And everybody erupted. They were pissed on social media.